Okay, so here is the thing. Last time we are done with the, standard English conventions, and these are the 4 areas of, sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, and usage. Today, we are going to start with the other category of questions in the writing test, which is more about the content itself, which is about the ideas. And that's why it's called expression of ideas. And as you can see here, we have 3 areas. We have development, organization, and effective language use. Okay? So today we're going to start with the first area, which is development. How the ideas are developed in a passage or in an essay. Now, I believe that we all know that an essay has 3 main parts, right? First of all, we have the introductory paragraph, where we have the introduction in the whole paragraph. And then we have, for example, 2, 3, or 4 main ideas that we need to discuss throughout the essay. So we have 3 or 4 body paragraphs, okay? And then, of course, we have the conclusion. It's also dedicated in one last paragraph. Now, the structure of these different parts of the essay are, the structures are different. As you can see here, first we're talking about the introduction. So as we know, the first paragraph is the introductory paragraph. So here we have our introduction, okay? So how does it go? Now, this figure here shows us how it works. Now, you cannot start immediately with the idea that you want to discuss, right? You need to start a little bit with a warm-up. You need to make it interesting for the readers to read, and you want to make your ideas to be smooth. So what you start with, as you can see here, is general background information. Okay, for example, I want to talk about technology, for example. So I can start with developments that are happening throughout history. I go one step back, okay? For example, I want to talk about, for example, a specific painter, a specific artist. I talk about art, and so on. Now, so this part, as you can see, guys, is general. Now, another thing is that you're gonna go to your specific idea immediately, because it will be a sudden transition. You need, again, a smooth transition between what's general and what's specific. And that's happening here in the second part, okay? So for example, if we have 2 sentences that are dealing with general information, okay, you can move after that to a transition. It can be also 1 or 2 sentences. So the transition, how does it work? How can we call it a transition? It's a transition because half of it refers to the general information, and the other half refers to the specific idea that I want to discuss, okay? So if it's 1 sentence, then the first part of the sentence is related to the general background information, and the second part is for the main idea. If it's 2 sentences, again, the same thing. The first sentence of the transition will be related to the general information. The second one will be related to the main idea. Now, the main idea of the whole essay, the main idea of the whole passage is usually the last sentence in the introductory paragraph, okay? And of course, it should be 1 sentence. So I can start with 1 or 2 sentences about general information. I can have 1 or 2 sentences for transition, but of course, my main idea, which is the main thing in the whole passage, should be the last sentence of the introduction. As you can see here, we are writing TS, which stands for thesis statement. Okay, so what is thesis statement? It's the main idea of not only 1 paragraph, not only 1 part, no, it's the main idea of the whole passage. And we should always remember that, guys, because there will be questions related to the main idea, okay? So they ask you something about the main idea, but they will not tell you where it is. You should know that, okay? So now we agree that the main idea of the whole passage is called thesis statement. And this thesis statement is found in the last sentence of the introduction. So far, so good? Is everything clear? Do we have any questions?
Does it always have to be in the last?
Yes. Yes. Look, in general, when we write, it can be, in the introduction, but anywhere. But to make things easier for us, and it's a test, so they specify one place for it, which is the last sentence of the introduction. So yes, in the test, it's always like this. Okay? I'm going to show you some examples, of course. So that's how the structure of the introduction is made. Now, when we go to the body paragraphs, things are different, okay? So for example, here, this is a body paragraph and all the other three ones, okay? Of course, just the last one is the conclusion or the concluding paragraph. Okay, so this is a body paragraph, this is another one, and this is another one, okay? Now, your thesis statement is discussing the whole thing, the main idea of the whole passage. Of course, you need to support it now. So out of this thesis statement or out of this main idea, you can have three main, or we can say sub-main ideas that you need to discuss. And that's why, for example, here we have 3 paragraphs. Okay, which means each paragraph will focus on one point that supports the main idea. Okay, now in each body paragraph, you should always start with the topic sentence. What is the topic sentence? The topic sentence is the beginning of any body paragraph, and of course, it is the main idea of the paragraph only. Okay. So that's how you start the paragraph, the topic sentence. What is the main point that you would like to focus on in this paragraph? You start with it in the first sentence, okay? And that's why it's called topic sentence. After that, of course, you need what? You need supporting details. You cannot just give me a point and move on. No, you need to support it. You need to make it clear. You need to make it believable. You want to make it supported with facts and science, for example. So we have supporting details, okay? And these supporting details, they can give you, reports, studies, examples, stories, researches, and so on. All different types of ideas that will support the topic sentence, okay? So it's very important, guys, that every single supporting detail is directly related to the topic sentence. You cannot go off topic. Once you go a little bit far with the argument, you are going off topic, and that's not acceptable. Because when the reader reads every single detail, it should be clear for the readers that every single idea or every single sentence supports this topic sentence here, okay? And then the last part, the concluding sentence. It's just one sentence that concludes what's mentioned in this paragraph. Okay? So the introductory paragraph, it has 3 parts: the general information, and then the smooth transition, and then the thesis statement itself, which is the main idea of the whole passage. Body paragraph also has 3 parts, but they are different. You start with the main idea of the paragraph, which is the topic sentence, and then you add supporting details and make sure that every single detail is directly related to the main idea, which is the topic sentence. And then the concluding sentence, actually here it's optional. You can write a concluding sentence or not. It's not a big deal. All right, now what about the conclusion? The conclusion usually also has 3 parts, okay? The first part that we have in the conclusion is restatement of the thesis statement, which means you're going to repeat the thesis statement here, but in a different way. You're going to use different words. You're going to use different structure, but you're going to repeat the same idea that's mentioned in the thesis statement. Okay, you just restate it. You say it in a different way. Number 2, you try to summarize the main points. So if you have, for example, 3 paragraphs, that means you have 3 main points. If you have 2 paragraphs, body paragraphs, you have 2 points, and so on. So you try to summarize, to have a summary of the main points, which are where, again, of course, they are mentioned already in the topic sentences. The last point, I'd like to call it the final touch. It can be the writer's opinion. It can be a way to suggest to people to carry on reading about the topic or anything similar to that. Okay, so as you can see, we have 3 parts of the essay: introduction, body, conclusion. And every part also contains the 3 elements, but these 3 elements are different. In the introduction, we have something, in the body paragraphs, we have something else, and then in conclusion, we also have something different. Okay, but the conclusion, as you can see, all we're doing is we are just emphasizing our main idea by restating the thesis statement. We are trying to remind the reader what this whole essay is about. So we summarize the main points, and then we put our final touch. Okay, this is how every single essay and every single passage on the SAT is structured. For the conclusion on the SAT, usually they just focus on the first part, which is restatement of the thesis statement, and sometimes they add a final touch. Okay, but we should be aware of all these elements so that we understand how the ideas are developed. And that's why now we said the first area we have in expression of ideas is development. And this is how you develop your ideas. Any questions?
Development is part of what? Can you repeat that part?
Here,
It's
look.
the first. Yeah.
It's the first part, the first area of expression of ideas. Now,
Okay.
so what are they going to ask us about when it comes to development? What are the things that they will, test us on? First of all, they will ask us about proposition. The word proposition means the main idea. Okay, and as we mentioned, we have 2 types of main ideas. The main idea of the whole passage, as we said, okay, is the thesis statement. And then the main idea of one paragraph is called the topic sentence. So what do they ask us? They ask us if we need to add a main idea, change the main idea, or keep it as it is. Okay? Now, how do I know if, for example, they underline the first sentence in the paragraph, and we know the first sentence is the topic sentence, so it's the main idea of the paragraph. How do I know if this is the best topic sentence or not? It's related to the support. So if you are asked about the first sentence in the paragraph, what you should do is be patient. You can also skip reading it because it's not important at the time. You go and read the other sentences and you see what are all the supporting details about. What is the discussion that's happening in this paragraph? Okay, when you highlight, and we're going to learn to do that together, of course, we are going to highlight the keywords in every single detail. So I have this sentence. What are the keywords in this sentence? So by finding the keywords, highlighting them, circling them, underlining them, we can summarize. Okay, so the first supporting detail is talking about this. The second is this. The third is that. If we put them together, then the main discussion is about this point. You go to the options then, for example, you look at A, B, C, and D, and you choose the sentence, of course, that can be the best introductory sentence about the whole discussion. Okay, so how can we answer the proposition is by looking at the support that comes after the proposition. So they ask us about the main ideas, right? But that's not all. They also ask us about the details, and that's why, as you can see here, the second point here after proposition is support. So again, they underline sentences and they ask us if we need to add, change, or keep as it is without any change. Now, how do we know if this sentence works as support or not? It's now the other way around. To know if a sentence is a good supporting detail, you need to go back to the main idea. And you ask yourself, does this sentence support the main idea? Does it give us any relevant information to the main idea? Is it really helpful in the discussion that's in the paragraph? If the answers for these 3 questions are yes, then of course, you choose this supporting detail. If not, you choose something else. The third area, which is focus. Focus is, they underline a sentence or they give you a new sentence in the question. It's not there in the passage, and they ask you, shall we add this sentence? Okay, or shall we delete it? Shall we keep it as it is, or shall we change it? Okay, here, what is the element? It's all about relevance. Again, you ask yourself, is this sentence relevant to the conversation or to the discussion that we have in the paragraph? Then you choose, for example, to keep it or add it. Okay, if it's not related, or it's related but it's off topic, like you're related but from a very far point of view, then we don't need that. It doesn't help the discussion. So you delete it, for example, or you tell them, no, we don't need it, we don't add it. Okay, so as you can see, we have one area for main ideas, which is proposition. We need to read the whole paragraph to understand the discussion and then choose the best proposition, main idea. And then for support and focus, again, we need to go back to the beginning of the paragraph, understand what the main idea of the paragraph is about, and then we can decide if it supports the main idea or not, if it's related to the main idea or not. Okay. The last point that we have in development is about the graphics, quantitative information. So here they will again give us a graph, a table, a chart that contains data that supports what's mentioned in the passage. Okay. Of course, they need to mention the same data in the graph. They will mention it again in the passage, but maybe they mention it in a wrong way. They change the numbers, they make it inaccurate, and so on. And the sentence, of course, is underlined, and they tell you, is this sentence correct according to the graph? So, of course, we need to go back to the graph. We need to read the data, see how things are going, what kind of information we have, and then we try to match it with the sentence in the passage. If the sentence is accurate, if the sentence really helps us to support the main idea of the paragraph by mentioning this specific data in the graph, then we say, oh, okay, so it supports the paragraph and it is correct according to the chart we have. So we choose it, okay? It can be wrong for two reasons. Maybe the numbers are wrong because, of course, tables and charts, they're all about years, numbers, percentages, ratios, averages, and so on. So we need to look at the numbers that we have in the graph, and then we need to look at the paragraph itself. Again, as I said, if it supports the paragraph, and if it's accurate and correct according to the information we have seen in the graph, that's the best thing we can choose. If it is correct, here's the thing now, if it is correct according to the graph, okay, like the graph tells us that there have been 1.5 million Americans who did something in 2020, for example. Okay, and they mentioned that in the sentence. So according to the graph, it's correct. It gives us the same number, 1.5 million Americans did something, but it doesn't support the paragraph. So it's wrong. Sometimes it supports the paragraph, but the numbers are different, so it's also wrong. So I should make sure that my sentence is doing two things at the same time when it comes to graphs. It supports the main discussion that's happening in the paragraph, and it's accurate according to the statistics and data that we have in the graph. Okay, guys, so these are the 4 areas that they ask us about when it comes to development. They ask us about main ideas, they ask us about supporting details, and they ask us about graphs. Okay, that's it for development. Do we have any questions?
No.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So now, of course, we need to put that into practice. It's not just about theory. Okay, so as we said, the sentence that we have related to the graph, it should be correct according to the numbers we have in the graph. That's number 1. 2, it should support the main idea of the paragraph. Okay, don't worry about graphs, inshallah. If we can finish the first part, which is about main ideas and supporting details, we're going to move to graphs, and I'm going to show you how we answer graph questions. Now, let's start with this. All right. Here, as you can see, question number 8. The underlined sentence, as you can see, it's in the middle of the paragraph. So what do you think it is? Do you think it's about proposition or it's about support and focus?
Support and focus.
Good, because it's in the middle of the paragraph. Look how they ask us the question. For example, this is a focus question. How do we know? Because they are asking us if we should delete the sentence or keep it. So here we need to ask ourselves again the same two questions. Does this sentence that's underlined in question number 8, does it support the main idea, which is the topic sentence at the beginning of the paragraph? Is it relevant to what's mentioned in the topic sentence? If you can say yes and yes, then you tell them no, it should be kept. And then you choose the best reason. Okay? If it is not if it doesn't support the topic sentence, and actually it's not relevant to the discussion in the paragraph, then you tell them, you know what, it should be deleted, and then you choose the best reason. So let's see how it works. As we agreed, in order to answer a support question, how do we know if this sentence is supporting or not? We go back to the beginning of the paragraph. Why? Because the first sentence is the topic sentence, again, which is the main idea of the whole paragraph. So what do? We need to analyze. How do we analyze? Simply, again, you can underline, you can highlight, you can circle. Yes, relevant means related. Now, let's see here. So they are telling us transportation planners. So that's the subject of this paragraph. Transportation planners. Okay, now you ask yourself, what's about them? They work, okay, closely with a number of community stakeholders. And then they give us examples, such as government officials and other interested organizations and individuals. Now, I can be patient a little bit and read the next one. Representatives from the local public health department might provide input in designing a network of trails and sidewalks to encourage people to walk more. So if I want to know what the main idea is about, I already highlighted the most important words. So this paragraph is going to tell us about who transportation planners work with. That's it. How did I know that this is the main idea of the paragraph? Because these are the keywords in the first sentence, which is the topic sentence. Okay, good. Now, they didn't ask us about the second sentence, but it helps me to understand how it works. So guys, here, if you look, they're telling you that we have representatives from the local public health department. So why are they mentioning these representatives? Any idea? Why did they mention these representatives from the local public health department? Because they are one example of who transportation planners work with. How do they work with them? Look, they said that they might provide an input in what? In designing a network of trails and sidewalks to encourage people to walk more. Okay? So the main idea, who transportation planners work with. The second idea, which is a supporting detail, it does support the main idea because it gives me an example of who these community stakeholders are. So the first group of people, they are the representatives from the health department. How do they work with transportation planners? They provide input, ideas in designing a network of trails and sidewalks to encourage people to walk more, okay? So as you can see, what I'm doing now, I'm selecting the keywords from each sentence. This is language analysis. You are analyzing each sentence, focusing on the main ideas here and there. Now, we can do question number 8, but to show you how also it should work, we can skip the underlined part and read the next sentence because we are not supposed to change anything about it, which means it's already correct. Then they mention members of the Chamber of Commerce. Again, why did they mention these members of the Chamber of Commerce? Look, it directly supports the main idea to give another group of community stakeholders who work with them. Good. How do they work with them? They share suggestions about designing transportation and parking facilities to support local businesses. So my underlying sentence that I am asked about now, it should do the exact same thing. It should tell me about a group of people who work with transportation planners and help them with their work, okay? Now, how can we do that? We need to highlight or underline again, or do whatever with the keywords. Look, according to the American Heart Association, walking provides numerous benefits related to health and well-being. So the whole thing in this sentence is that they are telling us walking gives a lot of benefits. Does that support the main idea? Is it relevant to the topic sentence and the discussion that we have in the paragraph? No, it's not. We have to be careful. It can be tricky because they are saying, you know, according to the American Heart Association. Okay, here they are just mentioning the source of this info. Who's saying that? It's the American Heart Association. Okay, what are they saying? They are saying that walking is beneficial to our health and well-being. Okay, good, thank you. But how does that support my main idea? It doesn't. It's not relevant to the main idea. Okay, so now we can very, you know, clearly just eliminate A and B because both are telling me to keep this sentence. But no, why would I keep it? It doesn't support the main idea. C and D, on the other hand, both say that this sentence should be deleted. Now, we just need to choose the right reason because there's always, you know, this kind of question. 2, they ask you to add. 2, they ask you to delete, and so on. Keep or delete, add or not add. And then since we have 2, of course, both answers cannot be correct. So what do they give us? They give us different reasons. Now we agree it should be deleted. So C and D are saying that this sentence should be deleted. But what is the reason? Is it C or D? I need you to examine these 2 options carefully. Don't tell me now. Just send me your answers on the chat box. Okay? Okay, guys. Sana, Nai, Yahya, Muhammad. What do you think, guys? I'm waiting for your answers. So we already agreed that this sentence should be deleted. But why? What's the reason for that? Is it the reason mentioned in C or in D? Okay, so it seems that we all agree on the right answer, which is C, right? Yes, it is C. As we said, it doesn't support the focus of the paragraph, which is what? It's the community stakeholders with whom transportation planners work. And that's again mentioned in the topic sentence, right? Because if we choose D, they are telling us that it should be deleted because it doesn't provide examples or specific examples of these benefits. Okay, now let's imagine, even if they told us about these you know, benefits and they mentioned specific examples, it still doesn't support the main idea. So I don't need it. Okay, so that's a support question. That's a focus question, and we've just done it. Now let's move to question number 18.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In development, we don't talk about the whole passage. It can be for only one paragraph.
Look, most of the time, okay, so it's like this. You can say 60 to 70% of the development questions, they are concerned about one paragraph. But you have also 20% where they ask you about the connection between 2 paragraphs. Okay? And then you have still 10% that you can be asked about the whole passage. Okay, so don't be in a rush. Just wait with you know, wait with me, bear with me, and I'll walk you through all the different types of questions that you can be asked about, inshallah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So now, as you can see, we have question number 18, right? And if we look at number 18, it's at the beginning of the paragraph. There is no underlying sentence. But we know that if we read the question, it says, which choice most effectively establishes the main topic of the paragraph? And they give us 4 different sentences. So now we know that this paragraph doesn't contain a topic sentence, and they're asking us to add the best one. because it's at the beginning of the paragraph, right? Number 18. So what should we do? Again, don't just read the, now it's not important at all to read the options. They will not help you in any way. As we agreed, to know what the main idea is, you should read the supporting details. So let's look how we can do it. Look, so this is the first supporting detail. His fine brushwork conveys, of course, we are talking about Kingman, okay? Just to keep that in mind, the painter. So his fine brushwork conveys detailed street level activity. That's my first key phrase. And then look, we talked about colons. Here they use the colon to introduce a list of examples. What do they mean by detailed street level activity? They're telling us a peanut vendor pushing his cart on the sidewalk. So, you know, it's a salesman who's just selling peanuts, comma, because it's a list. A pigeon pecking for crumbs around a fire hydrant. As you can see here, also we have a comma, but then there's a question about here. So of course we should add and an old man tending to baby outside a doorway, right? So I don't highlight the examples. I don't need to. I just focus on the first supporting detail, okay? Because of course, all the examples will be related to it. And then I move to the second one. Look, his broader brush, strokes and sponge painted shapes create, what do they create? Majestic city skylines. That's my second supporting detail. Again, what do we have here? We have a list of examples. How did we introduce this list of examples? With a preposition. Remember when we said there are 3 different or 4 different ways to introduce a list. One of them is to use just a preposition. So here they used with to give us a list of examples. How do we create, or how does he create majestic city skylines? So the first example is skyscrapers towering in the background. The second example is bridges connecting neighborhoods on either side of a river. And since this sentence is underlined, you don't have to read it. Why? Because of course there's a question about it and it might be changed. So it will not help you. At the end, to art critics and fans alike, these city scenes. So look, all we're talking, look, we summarized now, if you can see. This is what the concluding sentence does in the paragraph. It summarizes the whole discussion. All of these we talked about, the bridges, the skyscrapers, the salesman, the fire hydrant, the old man, the baby. All of these are what? City scenes, right? And we summarize that in the last sentence. So these city scenes represent the innovative spirit of what? Of the 20th century urban modernism. Urban, of course, it's the adjective of city. Modernism is just, you know, a style of art. So now, I know what's happening in this paragraph. I know what the main discussion is about. It's talking about his paintings and how they show us street level activity, majestic city skylines, and all of these examples that come with them are just a group of, or a set of city scenes. That's it. That's all the information you need to get from the paragraph. Okay? Now, of course, in the test, when you are doing this, you don't want to waste your time, right? So what do? If you can answer question number 19 while you are reading, you do it. You don't wait. If you can answer question number 20, you don't wait. So you are reading the paragraph because I don't want you to waste your time. Remember, timing is very important on the SAT. So yes, you are answering question number 18, and question number 18 requires reading the whole paragraph. So I'm not going to read the whole paragraph just to answer 18, and then I read it again to answer 19 and 20. No, my focus is on 18. I know that I should choose the best main idea, but if the questions 19 and 20, which are usually, you know, simple questions like punctuation, grammar, subject-verb agreement, wordiness, redundancy, I can do them immediately, okay? Now, we summarized the whole thing, and we said that the discussion of this paragraph is focusing on his paintings and how they show us street-level activity, city skylines, city scenes. Now, look at the options. Which sentence can be the best introduction or the best topic sentence for this paragraph that's talking about these 3 ideas? Look at them. Again, send me your answer on the chat box.
Which ones?
Which ones? A, B, C, and D, man. Can't you see them?
Yes. I was just zoomed in on. Can I scroll up a bit?
Scroll where? I'm gonna zoom out so that you can see the whole thing. But where are your answers, guys? I cannot see the answers. Only one person sent me the answers so far. So I don't know if you are still thinking about it or you're not thinking about it.
What does pioneer mean?
What?
Pioneer.
What? Pioneer?
Yes.
It's one of the first people who did something.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, 3 people sent their answers so far.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
The words we highlighted, the lists and after the prepositions, these are all supporting details, right?
Look, no, the examples, the lists, we did not highlight everything because if we highlight everything, we're going to be lost. Okay, you, of course, with some sort of how I show you, and then after that, with a lot of practice, your brain will be trained where to spot and find the key ideas. Okay, but of course, you cannot highlight everything. That's why what we highlighted was this street level activity. We didn't highlight the list. We don't need that because all these examples will support the same point, which is street level activity. And then we highlighted city skylines, okay, majestic city skylines, and then city scenes only. Because again, after the city skylines, what do we have? Examples. We don't need to highlight everything else, every single thing, because if you highlight everything, it's just the same as if you highlight nothing. So we should be selective in our highlighting. All right, so now most of us, I think, agree on the same answer, which is C. And yes, that's the right answer. Okay, now A is clearly wrong because here they didn't mention anything about the California style. So A is wrong. It's not related to the discussion in the paragraph. Again, D is wrong because it's talking about which school he attended. Again, here we're not talking about, for example, in this specific paragraph, we're not talking about his life, his biography. No, we're talking about his work and what kind of scenes his work shows. Now, B and C are in one way or another, they are similar to each other because B says, although cities were his main subject. So they mention actually that cities were his main subject. But remember, they started the sentence with although. So there will be contrast. They said that he occasionally painted natural landscapes. Okay, if you go to the paragraph, did they mention any natural landscapes? Rivers, lakes, seas, meadows, oceans, parks, gardens? No, nothing. Okay, so they mentioned cities were his main subject, and this is one way to trick you guys. But you should be careful. You need to understand the whole sentence. Although cities were his main subject, he did paint natural landscapes. No, the focus is not on natural landscapes here. The focus is on city scenes. And that's what we can find here. Look, instead of natural landscapes, we can focus on urban landscapes. Because urban, as we said, it's the adjective of city. So in his city landscapes, Kingman captures, shows, observes, records what? The vibrancy. Vibrancy is an equivalent to the word activity here, right? Of what? Of crowded cities. So the C is the best answer. Again, remember, there's never something on the SAT like B is right, but C is better. No. All the three answers, the other three answers are wrong for one reason or another. Now, I need you to tell me, read question number 20, and just tell me the type of this question. Is it about proposition, main idea? Is it about support? Is it about focus? I need one of these three elements: support, focus, or proposition. Just read the question. You should be able to know that from the question itself.
Should I send it on the chat or say the answer directly?
You can do both. Okay, yeah, so some of you chose support, the others chose focus. It's more of a support question, okay? Because focus is usually a question asking you to delete or keep a sentence based on if the sentence is related to the main discussion or not. But look, like if you said focus, it would not change the world. You would be able to understand how things work and you can answer it, okay? But it's more of support. So look, now focus with me here, please. Remember that in most of questions of standard English conventions, we didn't have questions really, right? We just had the number and then the four options, whether to change or no change. But in development, organization, and effective language use, most questions, they have instructions. So whenever there are instructions, before you answer the question, you need to highlight the keywords that you have there, okay? Look, the writer wants to complete the sentence with what? With a third example. That's the first key phrase you should highlight. Of a detail that Kingman uses to create his majestic city skylines. So my third example should be focusing on the city skylines and the background of the city, right? Skylines. So these are my key phrases, and I have to highlight them both. First of all, the phrase third example is telling me that, look, there are two other examples, okay? So you should choose an example that relates to the other two examples. And then the other phrase is telling me that all the three examples, the two that you already have in the passage and the one that you're going to choose now to answer this question, are all about city skylines, okay? That's why we highlight these words, to keep me focused, to know exactly what I should choose in order not to be tricked. These questions are tricky, and the only way to avoid confusion and being tricked simply is to focus. What makes our brains focus? Highlighting, underlining, circling, and so on. Now, so as you can see here, guys, the sentence is saying his broader brush stroke and sponge painted shapes create majestic city skylines. I found the part. The first example is skyscrapers towering in the background. The second example is about bridges connecting neighborhoods on either side of a river. The underlined sentence I'm asked about now, look, it says, and delicately painted creatures such as a tiny, barely visible cat prowling in the bushes of a park. My question to you now, guys, does the example of a cat here work with the other two examples of skyscrapers and bridges?
No.
No, it doesn't. What do bridges and skyscrapers have in common?
They're high and like not
Yes,
on the ground.
They're both high buildings, very tall buildings. And when we have a painting, where do they appear? Remember, it's in the city skylines, right? Now I go to the options. And I already know that A is wrong because I cannot put an example of a cat to talk about city skylines and to be connected to the other two examples that are about bridges and skyscrapers, right? So I need something that also appears on the city skylines to appear in the background of the painting. What is it gonna work? Is it B, C, or D? Again, examine the three options, send me your answer on the chat box.
What does exquisitely mean?
Wonderfully, perfectly, in a beautiful way.
Port is like the side of the where ships come from.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, this time we have different answers. Some chose B, some chose C, and some chose D. I'm gonna wait a little bit for other answers before we discuss. Okay. Now, let's see. First of all, what we can, of course, if we're not sure about the right answer, we go the opposite way of, instead of choosing the right answer, we start eliminating the ones that we are sure that they are wrong, right? And that's why we first eliminate C. You cannot just say other details. That's very general. And remember, we need a third example, which means I need a specific example. And just saying other details that help define Kingman's urban landscapes, that's very general. I need a third example. I need something specific. So C doesn't work. Okay, now B, exquisitely lettered street and storefront signs. The main word, the key word in this whole thing is what? Signs. The signs that we have, in front of the stores, right? Does that appear in the city skyline? Does that have the same, size of skyscrapers and bridges? Not really. So the answer is D. Enormous ships docking at busy urban ports. Okay, so the answer is D. Remember, I need this example to tell me about something that appears in the city skylines. It should be big and huge, just like the towers and the bridges. Let me show you an example here.
But we don't see ships in the sky. I don't get it.
Okay, I told you, look, it should, like, of course, we're not going to put the ships in the sky, right? But if you take any city that has sea or a river or something like that, and you see a painting, you're going to see bridges, you're going to see towers, and you're going to see what? Ships. For example, I've just Googled Istanbul, right? So this is an image of Istanbul, as you can see here. So what do we see? We see the bridge, we see the towers, and what do we see? A ship. Here in a different one. This is also Istanbul. What can we see? We can see towers and we can see ships. This is another one, this is another one, and so on. It's not one picture or two, okay? I don't know if you can give me another example of another city. Would you like to give me an example of a city that has a view over the sea? What do you have in Saudi Arabia? What is it? Jeddah? Does it work? Let's try. Okay, So even if we look at the here, what are they showing us? They're showing us bridges, towers, and there are ships, right? Are there ships here? Let me just double check. Yeah, there are a lot of ships here. Oh, okay, we're not gonna go deeper, but for example, this page, this picture, look, what can you see? You can see the towers. Here, for example, there are no bridges, it's fine, but you have highways, and then you have the ships. So this is the general thing that we have about any city in the world when we have a painting about it, especially if it has a view over the sea, okay? Did we see any storefront signs? No, because the picture or the painting is very general. It will not show us very, these very specific details, or even if it does, we need to focus a lot, like really come close to see them. So the answer is D. Now I'm gonna leave question number 18 to you guys to do it on your own. You need to decide if it's focus, support, or proposition. This is question number 18, as you can see. So the question is about this area. Read the question carefully. See what you need to do here. Decide if it's support, focus, or proposition. And then do your work, analyze, highlight keywords here and there. Try to find what is the best answer. Send it to me in the chat box. Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
What does he mean by skylines?
What I've just told you, what I've just shown you in the
Yes.
pictures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yani it's not.
This means the general picture or the the overview of the city.
Okay, yeah,
That's what
thank
it
you.
means. Welcome. Okay, guys, so I'm waiting for your answers. Question number 18. Please follow the same steps. First of all, read the question carefully, highlight the keywords in the question itself. You should know exactly what the question wants you to do. Then you go to the passage, you start from the beginning to get the context. Remember, it's all about the context. And then after that, you can choose the right answer. Do not just do not just read the part that's in the question. Always try to get a bigger picture, a bigger context to help you answer. Okay, guys, so can you please send your answers? I received some answers. I'm waiting for the others. All right, so we have different answers, but we have a majority that chose something specific. All right, let's see. So here, I think you did it like this. At this point, which means here, the writer is considering adding. So this is a focus question. We just ask ourselves if this sentence is relevant to the main idea, to the discussion that we have in the paragraph or not, right? So first of all, we start reading the paragraph, or you can read the sentence, but I prefer to keep the sentence to the end to understand what the context of the paragraph is. So studies have offered several possible reasons that bees are vanishing, okay? So the whole thing is about reasons why bees are vanishing. That's the whole idea of the paragraph, okay?
But
One
didn't you
reason,
tell
so
us-
this, what?
Didn't you tell us that we shouldn't read the if it's underlined because it could change?
Yes, but I'll tell you later, because if I tell you now, I'm gonna spoil everything, okay?
Okay.
So the first reason here is what? It's the use of pesticides. That's the first reason. And they are talking about specific pesticides that are called neonicotinoids, right? Which are absorbed by plants and linger much longer. So they stay longer than do the normal, the topical, the usual pesticides. Okay, and then chemicals such as herbicides and fungicides may also play a role contaminating the pollen that bees typically feed on and inhibiting health insect maturation. All right, so the first reason, it's the pesticides, and then they mentioned other chemicals. That's the other reason, which is the herbicides and fungicides, okay? And here they are asking about something in the middle between the two reasons. If I read the sentence, look, prolonged exposure to neonicotinoids. So neonicotinoids is already mentioned here, and the idea of prolonged exposure is already mentioned here. They linger much longer. Okay, has been shown to increase what? Bees' vulnerability. Okay, weakness to what? To disease and parasitic mites. So they told us already that these neonicotinoids are one reason why bees are vanishing, are dying. And then we are explaining that this prolonged exposure to neonicotinoids, that again mentioned in the previous sentence, it increases the bee's vulnerability to disease and parasitic mites, which of course leads to their death. So I would say that this sentence is related. It does support the discussion and it works, it's relevant. So I'm not gonna say no. Okay, I'm gonna say yes, let's add it. Okay, so for what reason? Is it because it provides support to the claim made in the previous? Of course, he's not precious. That's a typo. Previous sentence? Yes, it does support the previous sentence, as we said, because the previous sentence again mentions the idea of neonicotinoids and how they stay longer. Or is it because it introduces a new idea? Of course, it's not a new idea. It's already mentioned in the previous sentence. So the best answer is A. Okay? That's the answer. All right. And so these are different examples of development questions that we talked about at the beginning of our session today. We said they're going to ask you about the main idea. That's what we did in question number 18 here, if you remember. We said they're going to ask us about details, supporting details. So this is a focus question, number 18, right? Number 20 is a support question, and number 18 is also a focus question. All right, so now you know exactly what you are going to be asked about. What does it mean, development of ideas? What kind of questions you're going to be asked, how to answer these questions, and so on. The fourth point of development after proposition, support, and focus, as we said, is graphs. But we're going to talk about graphs after the break. So now let's have our break for 15 minutes. We're going to come back at 6:55. And inshallah, after the break, we're going to talk about the final point of development, which is the graphics. All right?
Yes.
Okay, guys, so we are back now. Let's get started, please. I've just shared with you on the group the 2 documents that we are going to be working on now, right? Are you there? Come on, guys, it's time. Samir, Yahya, Sana, Usama, Muhammad. Where are you guys? Shall I call your name so that you can appear? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Mr.
Where are you guys? Okay, so before the break, as you know, we covered the first 3 points about development, which are proposition, main ideas, and then supporting details in 2 ways, support and focus. Now we're talking about quantitative information, which is graphics, okay? Now, we know that in the writing text, we have 4 passages. So 1 or maximum 2 passages will be accompanied by graphics. It can be a table, it can be a chart, or a diagram, okay? So first of all, we need to talk about the question types. What are they going to ask us about? So passages and, you know, questions on the writing language test may include 1 or more tables, graphs or charts that relate. Of course, these charts or tables or graphs relate to the topic of the passage, okay? They are, you know, they are used to support the passage. So we have 3 different types of questions when it comes to graphics in the writing test, okay? Number 1, a graphic may provide additional statistical support for a point made in the passage. All right, so they give you the graph and they ask you, what can we add to the passage in order to support 1 point mentioned there, okay, from the graph itself. That's one way. Another way is that we're going to have questions that may ask you to use information from the graphic to correct a factual error, as we said. Maybe there's something wrong in the numbers, something wrong in the percentages, and so on. The third kind of questions may ask you to replace the passage's vague description. So we have, for example, an underlined sentence in the passage talking about the graph, but the description that we have in this sentence is not clear. Okay, it's vague. So we should replace it with something more accurate, something more precise. Okay, so these are the 3 different types of questions we can have on graphics. Either to add statistical support from the graph to the passage, or to correct a factual error in an underlined sentence, or if we have a vague description in one of the sentences describing what we have in the graph, we should replace it with something that's more accurate. Okay, how do we do that? So of course, on the writing test, you start reading until you have question number 1, and you try to answer question number 1, then you answer it, you continue reading question number 2, you continue reading, you do 3. So it's reading and doing the questions at the same time in a parallel way. Okay, you don't read the whole passage and then answer the questions. No, in the writing section, you read and answer at the same time. So when you have the graph, you need to stop there, of course, and to answer the question, you have to look at the graph. Okay, what do you look at? First of all, do not ignore that. You should read the title of the graph. That's very important, because the title will tell you exactly what kind of information we have there. Then, for example, it's a diagram. So it have, for example, it has an X and it has Y, right? So we have to look at the X and Y. And we're trying to see what we are comparing here. What are these things? Like, what's the unit here and what's the unit there? Okay. And then we look at the data itself. What kind of data we have there? So we can also mention here, look at the data itself. What are some conclusions that can be drawn from this graph? And you can also add if there is any notes that comes with the graph. Sometimes notes are helpful. Okay. Of course, these are some other things. We usually do them by reading, like what is the topic sentence of the paragraph? What is the main discussion in the paragraph? What kind of evidence we can include? What kind of information, again, we can include? And if there's anything that's not relevant. Okay, but let's focus on two things. First of all, decide what type of question you have. Okay, is it to add statistical support? Is it to correct an error? Or is it to replace a vague description with an accurate one? Okay, after you decide what type of question you have, you go to the graph, you read the title, you see what kind of information it's communicating. You look at X and Y, you look at the data and what's being compared. You look if you have any additional notes. And then, of course, you go to the question, you read the question, you highlight the keywords in the question. Okay, and then by looking at the options you have, you choose the best answer. Okay, let's put that into practice. All right, let's see here. So as you can see now, this is question number 11, and it says, which choice completes the sentence? So we need to complete the sentence with accurate data based on the graph. So as you can see here, it's the third type of question, which is replacing a vague description with a more accurate one. Okay, and it's question number 11. So as you can see here, this is the underlined sentence. If we look here, we can start at least from the beginning of the sentence as usual to get the context. So the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics forecasts steady job growth. Again, highlight the keywords, okay, in the passage. So what do these statistics show us? They show us that there will be a steady job growth in this field. What field? Remember here, we're talking about transportation planning. And then this is the underlined sentence. And then we need to decide if it's already accurate, so we choose no change, or it's vague, or there's something better, or it contains a factual error, and we correct it. Look, projecting that 16% of new jobs in all occupations will be related to urban and regional planning. Okay, now I look at the graph. Okay, so number one, I read the question, highlight the keywords. Number two, I read the passage, highlight the keywords, and then I go to the graph. Okay, now urban and regional planners present increase in employment. So look, we're talking about percent increase in employment, and the projection is between the years 2010 and 2020. So this is the title. So what are we talking about? Urban and regional planners. Okay, what about them? We're talking about an increase in percentage in their employment for which years? Between 2010 and 2020. Okay, now what do we have in Y? We have different areas. First, we have social scientists and related workers. 2, we have urban and regional planners. 3, we have the total for all occupations. Now we look at the data. For social scientists and related workers, the percentage is 18. For urban and regional planners, it's 16. For total, all occupations, it's 14. Okay, so I know that we're talking about job growth. Now let's look at the numbers. 16% of new jobs in all occupations will be related to urban and regional planning. So first of all, it has a factual error and it is vague. It's not clear. Why? Because first of all, they are saying 16% in the passage, right? But the 16% is not for all occupations, as the sentence says here. No, it is for urban and regional planners. And then it's also confusing because all occupations, the percentage is 14, urban and regional planners, the percentage is 16. And here they just mentioned 16 for both. So that's vague, confusing, it's not clear, okay? So we know that A, no change, is wrong because the sentence is not correct according to what we have in the graph, right? So A is wrong. Now, let's see here. I'm gonna zoom out so that we can see everything all at once. Okay, so as we said, here they say 16 for all occupations and urban and regional planning. That's confusing and it's not correct because if we look at all occupations, it's 14, not 16. A is wrong. B, warning, however, that job growth in urban and regional planning will slow to 14. So this is the urban and regional planning, and here they are giving us the 14%. Again, what is it? It's not 14, it's 16. So B is also wrong, right? C, predicting that employment of urban and regional planners will increase 16% between 2010 and 2020. So first of all, they focused only on one area. They made it specific, urban and regional planners. They mentioned the right number, which is 16%. And of course, it's between 2010 and 2020. So C is correct. D, very quickly, indicating that 14 to 18% of urban and regional planning positions will remain unfilled. First of all, the percentages are vague because it's not specific. They are saying 14 to 18. Second, the information is wrong. They are saying that they're going to be unfilled. The positions will be unfilled. And we don't have anything about that here in the graph. So what is the best answer? It is C. Okay, again, urban and regional planners mentioned here, 16% mentioned there, 20 and 2020 mentioned there. Okay, let's move to another question. So as usual, we start with a question. Here we have two questions, 15 and 16, and they both need the same thing. What is it? Accurate interpretation of the data. So we need the right information from the graph, okay?
When they say accurate interpretation, they mean the vague description?
Of the data, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. And vague is the wrong, it's the wrong one. Do you get what I mean?
خلاص, just look, you have interpretation here. It means in the graph we have numbers. We need to put them in the passage as sentences. So it's just the conversion of numbers to words. Okay?
Okay.
If we start here with the passage, question number 15, look, since the emergence of CCD, what is CCD? It's mentioned before. It's a colony collapse disorder. This is a disease that, happens to honeybees. Okay? So since the emergence, since the appearance of CCD around 2006, bee mortality, of course, mortality, what does it mean? Death. Death rates of the bees have, the sentence says, exceeded. So it was more than 50% of the population each winter. Okay, keep that in mind. What are we talking about now? We're talking about the bee mortality rates. They are saying that. Just bear with us a little bit because this is an important question. So I go to the graph now and I do the same thing. I follow the same steps. First of all, you have the title, Managed Honeybee Colony Losses. So here we're talking about, again, the death that's happening to bees in their colonies. That's the title. I focus on the word losses. And then I look at why. Here, as you can see, we have percentages. Percentages of what? Percent total colony winter loss. Each winter loss, okay? What do I have in X? I have the winter seasons, years, 2006, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, etc. What about the data? As you can see, the data here shows us that the death rates are going up and down. There isn't a steady, which means constant, continuous increase, or a steady decrease. No, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Are there additional notes? Yes, they are telling us that when it's 15% or lower, this is an acceptable range. Above that, it's not acceptable. Okay? I've read everything that the passage is giving me. So of course we focus on the sentence, the original sentence in the graph that says that the rates exceeded 25% each winter. Now, where's 25? Here it is. I can just, for example, imagine a line or draw a line. Did the rates exceed 25% each winter? Yes,
No.
all of them except for this one. Yes, exactly. So it's no. Just because it didn't exceed 25% in 2011, 2012, that makes the sentence wrong because it's saying each winter. But here we have one. That's not correct. So I know now that that A is wrong. Let's look at B. Been above the acceptable range. We go back to the passage. Remember, we need to complete the sentence. B mortality rates have been above the acceptable range. Are they all above the acceptable range?
Yes.
Yes, so now I can say temporarily that B is correct. I need to check the other options quickly, C and D. Not changed from year to year, noticeably. No, of course, as you can see, there is a noticeable change from one year to another. So C is wrong. D, greatly increased every year. Again, that's wrong because we said it's not a continuous increase or a continuous decrease. There are ups and downs. So now I'm sure 100% that my answer is correct. It is B, which is in each winter, the rates exceeded the acceptable range, or they have been above the acceptable range. Okay? Question number 16. I need you guys to do this question on your own. You already have the documents in the group. I cannot show you everything here. Okay? I'm going to keep it here on the passage and the graph. And then you use your documents that you have in the group so that you can answer the question. Okay? So now we're doing question number 16. So I'm waiting for your answers, guys.
When they say about percentage, يعني find the percentage or how?
Yes, Yahya, you can. What? Sorry, can you go again?
I'm saying when they ask about the percentage, they say rose almost about 10%. Yani what do they mean here? They want us to find the percentage? Well, I didn't get it.
Rose is the past of rise, which means increase.
Yes, but percentage, I mean, what do
Did you read the passage? Did you get the context? If you didn't read the passage, you're gonna be out of context. You're gonna get what's going on.
Okay.
You need the context, as we say. So after you read the question, you go to the passage, you get the context, and then you move to the graph. Come on, guys. I'm waiting for your answers. So Osama, Yahya, and Muhammad have already sent their answers. What about the others? All right, here's the thing. So we continue reading, okay? So we answered question number 15. We don't skip to 16. We read there. Now, there was one sign of hope. Okay, what is that sign of hope? During the 2010-2012 winter season, so we have two winter seasons, 2010, 2011, and then 2011-2012. Between these two seasons, there was a sign of hope. Bee mortality rates decreased slightly. And beekeepers, because of that, they predicted, they guessed, they speculated that the colonies would recover, okay? Now, this is how is it interpreted in the graph. Look, so in 2009 to 2010, it was very high, right? It's like 32, 33. Then they told us, look, in these two winter seasons, look, there's a noticeable decrease, right? In these two seasons between 2010 and 2012. So that gave them hope that these colonies would recover. That's what the passage is telling us. Now let's focus here. Yet. We have contrast. So what do we expect? We expect an increase, because after these 2 seasons, we have a lot of decrease, which is something good, because we're talking about the death rates. We have yet. So I should understand or expect that what's coming is the opposite, because we have the word yet. In the winter of 2012, 2013, the portion of the bee population lost fell. So fell, it means there is further decrease, right? So it's not logical to use yet, because here we have decrease, and here we have fell, decrease. You cannot combine between these 2 ideas using the conjunction yet, right? So you know that there's something wrong here. If we go now to the graph, getting the context, we will understand that in these 2 seasons, there was this decrease, and that's why they had hope. Yet in the next one, 2012, 2013, there was what increase? How much? It's almost 10%, because here we can say it's something between 21 and 22. And here, for example, again, 21 or 22, right? So what do we have? We have increase almost 10%. And here they're telling us, they completed the sentence. They said 31% of the colonies that pollinate crops. So they mentioned 31, right? What I need to mention is, first of all, can I say that the portion of the bees lost was double what it had been the previous year? No, it's not double. Number of losses which had fallen within the acceptable range, we know that there is no rate that fell within the acceptable range. We answered the previous question and we said they have been all above the acceptable range. So there's no one of these rates that fell within the acceptable range. So C is wrong. So what is the answer? It is D. Okay. The portion of total colonies lost rose, increased 10%. Or 10 percentage points with a loss of what? And then we have the rest of the sentence, with a loss of 31% of the colonies. And again, now if you go to the graph, you will see that yes, it is actually 31. So now it all adds up, to the same point, and the answer is correct. Now, here we have again a passage, a graph with 2 questions. And I'm going to give you the time to work on them on your own. The questions are 20 and 21. In each question, we have an underlined sentence. First of all, we should read the question, understand what the question wants us to do, and then read the context to understand what's going on in the passage. 3, look at the graph, decide what's right, what's wrong, and then send me your answers on the chat box. Okay? So remember, it's the last 2 pages, questions 20 and 21. No, all the options are different. You don't have two options that give us the same thing. Okay, guys, so the first question is saying that the figure shows the results for the nesting sites. Furthermore, at 4 of the 7 locations averaged over the 4 years of the study. Here's the question. The number of predators invading the nests increased over time at each location, right? The number of predators invading the nests increased over time at each location. Now, here's the thing. All right, let's look at the figure first. So what are they telling us about? They are telling us about the nest survival according to the site. So it's the nest survival by site. What do we have here? We have the percent of initial for the surviving nests. And then here we have the number of days from 0 to 10 days. So this is the time here, okay? And these are 4 different locations. So this line shows us the location of 82 degrees north. And this line is showing us the 73. This line is showing us the 63. And this line is showing us the 53. Okay, so what's happening over time? What's happening is that all of them are showing what? Decrease in survival over time. They all started higher and then went down, as you can see, right? Now, here is the thing. Since we have decrease in the nests, doesn't that mean that the number of predators increased? Yes. However, just ask yourself this question. Did they tell us anything about the number of predators? No. So that's tricky. The answer is not A. It makes sense, it's logical. But we have no idea about the number of predators in this figure. What does the figure show? It shows us the number of the survived or the surviving nests. Okay? Despite the fact A and C have the same meaning. What does, again, remember, we need the data represented in the figure. Does the figure show us anything about the number of predators? No. Okay? And we know that the percent of surviving nests did not increase. They decreased, as I showed you. So the answer is C. Okay? Remember, that's why I tell you, focus on the question. We need data represented in the figure. Let's go back to the figure.
Can I ask a question?
Do we have anything about the number of predators? No. So I cannot choose it. What is it, Tasneem?
You said which two choices have the same meaning?
A and C.
But
Because
isn't
when the
C
number
the
of
answer?
predators increases, what do you expect to happen to the nests?
More survival. I mean less survival.
Yeah, right? But again, I need something that the figure is telling me. And the figure doesn't have anything about the number of predators. Because remember, I always tell you, we need evidence. The SAT is called evidence-based reading test and evidence-based writing test, which means never choose an answer just because it makes sense. That's what happens to many students. I ask them, what is the answer? C. Why is it C? Because it makes sense. No. I respect the fact that it makes sense, but do I have evidence to it, whether in the passage or in the graph? If I have evidence, if I can go and show you, then yes, it makes sense and I have evidence for it, I choose it. If not, I don't choose it. The other
So
question,
C?
21, what is it?
I'm saying so it's C.
Yeah, 20, the answer is C. For 21, these researchers found that the percent of surviving nests was greater. You cannot stop here. You need to read the whole sentence. Remember the context. Was greater at locations having higher latitudes, which means the higher the location is, the greater the percentage of surviving nests is. If you look here, is that correct? This is the highest location, 82. And yes, it has the highest line of percentage. 53 is the lowest location. And yes, it has the lowest line, and so on and so forth. So yes, the higher the location, the greater the percent or the percentage of the surviving nest. So I'm gonna say no change, keep it as it is. Because it didn't remain the same, and it was not smaller, and I have nothing to do about eggs. So the answer is A. Okay, guys. So today we covered the first area that we have in the category of expression of ideas, which is development. Remember, development is about proposition, main ideas, support and focus, which are both about supporting details, and then quantitative information, which is the graphics, charts, tables, and graphs. All right. And we practiced some questions to understand how we are asked about them on the SAT, how we should find the answer, and so on. We still have two areas, organization and effective language use. And inshallah, we are expected to end them next week so that we can finish the whole writing part before Eid, inshallah. Okay? So that after Eid, we can practice a little bit for writing and then we can move immediately to the reading test. All right? Just to remind you guys, again, starting from next week, we're gonna have our lessons at 7:30, unfortunately. Okay, so it's gonna still be 2 hours, but instead of starting at 5:30, ending at 7:30, we are going to start at 7:30 and end at 9:30. Okay, and I hope that this is just temporary. I cannot promise you, but I hope inshallah it's temporary for a limited period of time. And then we're gonna see if it's gonna change or not. Okay, that's it for today. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy your time. No, not only for next week. No, not only for next week. All right. Yeah, that's it for today. Enjoy your time and see you next week, inshallah. Goodbye.